Free plugins have gotten so good that they've replaced some of the plugins I use when I'm mixing and mastering. Let's focus on the mastering side of things though, as we detail the best free mastering plugins and chain in 2025. We'll cover 6 incredible plugins, and then at the end of the video, I'll show you how they could be used in a mastering chain. First off, let's look at JS Inflator, which you could find on GitHub. So JS Inflator is the Oxford Inflator. It's a one-to-one remake that even adds some additional functionality to the original plugin, like oversampling and fixed latency or linear phase processing. I'm a huge fan of the original and this remake. It waves shapes from lower amplitude aspects of the waveform. In this way, it retains the original timbre of the signal while leaving peaks alone. Meanwhile, it amplifies quieter aspects of the recording, which makes easily masked details much easier to hear and the overall signal sound fuller and more impressive. When mastering, a higher curve value mixed with a moderate effect percentage brings up a lot of lower level detail. Similar to how a limiter could push up quieter details, the inflator does the same thing but without the need for a brick wall ceiling. Additionally, mild harmonics are added to the signal, causing a full sound without significantly changing the timbre. So, let's take a listen to it and notice how, just like the original inflator, it does a fantastic job at creating a louder sound without changing peaks. Next up, let's cover Wavebreaker by Press Play. So Wavebreaker is the best free limiter that's currently available. Even if you already have a limiter that you like, maybe even one that you've paid a lot of money for, I'd still recommend Wavebreaker as a fantastic, super clean alternative. Now, most limiters don't actually limit, or if they do it poorly. Their entire job is to avoid wave shaping while pushing the signal into a ceiling. When done properly, the timbre of the signal is retained, distortion is kept to a minimum, and you can achieve a louder sound without noticeable artifacts. Now, most limiters end up clipping the signal, even expensive ones. Now, this doesn't mean that they sound bad, just that it's difficult to predict how they're going to behave unless you look behind the scenes. Wavebreaker, on the other hand, does exactly what it's supposed to do. The peaks aren't shaped. Instead, look ahead is used to determine how much peaks need to be turned down, and then clean gain is used to attenuate them. Furthermore, the plugin's response time is fantastic. Large changes in amplitude are accommodated without significant amplitude modulation or any changes to the ADSR. Now, if you want less distortion at the expense of slight changes to the ADSR, increase the preserve function. If you don't mind some mild distortion, you can keep this at 0. If you want some additional harmonics, introduce mild saturation with the saturation dial. When engaged, the ceiling includes a soft clipper. So let's take a listen to it, greatly amplifying the signal. I'll compensate the gain so you can more easily hear how it affects the track other than its loudness. Next up, let's talk about Attractor by Analog Obsession. So Attractor is a brand new plugin that lets you process the attack and the release of the signal separately. With it, you can determine how much compression is introduced to either, if one section is saturated while the other isn't, and so on. Now, I'm still experimenting with this plugin, but so far I've noticed that a mild amount of saturation and compression to the release side, mixed with a lower wet-dry ratio, goes a long way when you're mastering. Now, it's definitely more aggressive than a lot of the plugins on this list, but if it's used subtly, it works really well on a stereo track. Let's take a listen to it, and let me know what you think about this plugin. So far, I'm pretty impressed with what it's doing. Get professional analog mastering that accurately translates what you hear in your head. Seriously though, when people work with us, they get results. That's why major industry professionals like Keith Urban's producer Aaron Schurz works with us, Grammy Award-winning AJ Castillo, Billboard #1 charted artist Megan Lindsay, Grammy Award-winning artist Tulis, The Voice singer Cody Ballou, Grammy-nominated producer Tyler Kane, Warner Music artist Ricky Young, and the list goes on. Watch the rest of this video, and at the end, use the link in the description to get direct access to us for personalized analog mastering that accurately translates what you hear in your head. Next up, let's cover PORTEC and Fresh Air. So PORTEC, another plugin from Analog Obsession, has quickly become one of my favorite EQs. It works well, allows for a quick Pultec low-end trick, and it offers an enjoyable high-mid filter. In short, I set the lows to either 20 or 30 Hz and boost them. Then, I cut it to a lesser extent. This causes the subs and the lows to be amplified, but it introduces a cut to the low mids. Subsequently, the lows are incredibly impactful and impressive, but the signal doesn't become muddy since the low mids are controlled. Then if I need it, I could boost a small amount of 3 kHz with a broader filter size to add clarity. This is great when I want a master to have more lows, and I want to bring the vocals forward by amplifying the third formant with the Bell filter. Now since you've probably heard of Fresh Air, I'll include it in this section as well. If I use it when I'm mastering, super subtle settings are always enough to brighten and amplify the high ranges of the mix. The harmonics introduced are low in amplitude, but they're dense enough to cover the noise floor while amplifying the high range. Like the Pultec, it's super simple to use and it has a large impact on the sound. Let's take a listen to both PORTEC and Fresh Air introduced, one after the other, and notice how they complement each other pretty well. So last up, before we cover a quick chain that you could create with these plugins, let's talk about ZL Equalizer, which you could find on GitHub. Now it's a genuinely impressive free plugin with mid-side filters. I prefer to use this at the beginning of the chain or at the end of the chain to balance out the sound before processors or to shape the sound after processing, respectively. Now if you use it at the beginning of your mastering chain, I'd recommend cutting the side image lows with a high pass and a little of the low mids with the stereo bell. Then, address any ranges as you see fit. If I use it at the end of the chain, it varies a bit, but again I'll typically cut the side image lows, since processing will cause variation between the left and the right channels, which reintroduces a lot of stereo low frequency information. Then, I'll find an area in the mid-range, usually between 500 to 1.2 kHz, that could benefit from being a little wider. Once I find a good center frequency, I'll use a subtle bell on the side image to boost the area slightly. The same could be done for the air frequencies, just to add a little width to them. A subtle shelf is going to work well for that. Now if you need some more vocals, you could boost a little of 3 to 5 kHz on the mid image, or you could dip it if there's too much, and then to balance out the overall frequency response, you could add some of the side image in that range. So the point being, it's a great free alternative to the Pro Q3, but also you got to keep in mind that it doesn't offer linear phase filters. So let's take a listen to these plugins introduced one at a time as a chain. I'll show you the settings that I'm using, but keep in mind that you'll need to adjust them for your particular mix. Get professional analog mastering that accurately translates what you hear in your head. Seriously though, when people work with us, they get results. That's why major industry professionals like Keith Urban's producer Aaron Schurz works with us, Grammy award-winning AJ Castillo, Billboard #1 charted artist Megan Lindsay, Grammy award-winning artist Tulis, The Voice singer Cody Ballou, Grammy-nominated producer Tyler Kane, Warner Music artist Ricky Young, and the list goes on. Why waste your time creating masters that don't accurately translate what you hear in your head when you could instantly fix a problem by clicking the link in the description and working directly with professionals who have already done what you're trying to do? We've mastered thousands of songs that accurately translate what each client hears in their head, and it'll work for you too. Click the link in the description now and get direct access to us for personalized analog mastering that accurately translates what you hear in your head.